Still men.
Men, yeah. So it's always men.
The crux of the argument is, listen, I agree. I already agree with you that men can act as the enforcement mechanism, right? But what I don't disagree
so
is
then you have a paradox.
What are you talking about?
So if women can't enforce their rights and they have to get their rights from men have to grant them their rights because they're the enforcers, then it's paradoxical to say they're equal.
If you want to talk about it comes from a system of participation. So if you're talking about before women getting the ability to vote and things like that, then fine, you have a point and I'll concede that to you. But if you're talking about after women got the right...
I do not concede the point. In fact, women's mechanism of enforcement comes from the collective. And I have history to back me up. Rome. 215 BC, a new law was passed, Lex Oppia. It was a Roman austerity measure enacted during the Second Punic War to curb female extravagance and redirect funds to the war effort. It limited women to owning no more than half an ounce of gold, wearing multiple colored clothing, or riding in carriages within the city. Following a massive, unprecedented public protest by women, the law was repealed in 195 BC. BC, not BCE. The supporters of Lex Oppia were led by such men as Cato the Elder, who argued that the law removed the shame of poverty because it made all women dress in equal fashion. Cato insisted that if women engaged in a clothes contest, they would either feel shame in the presence of other women, or on the contrary, they would delight in a rather base victory as a result of extending themselves beyond their means. He also declared that a woman's desire to spend money was a disease that could not be cured, but only restrained. The removal of Lex Oppia, Cato said, would render society helpless in limiting the expenditures of women. Cato pronounced that Roman women, already corrupted by luxury, were like wild animals who have once tasted blood, in the sense that they could no longer be trusted to restrain themselves from rushing into, a word I won't say, of extravagance. Cato also chastises the men for letting the woman sway them into repealing the law, and affirms that its abrogation will cause the spread of luxury. The proponents of abolishing the Lex Oppia were led by Marcus Fundinellia and Lucius Valerius, as well as the other consul, Lucius Valerius, elected in 195 BC. Flucius contested Cato's assumptions that there would be no rivalry among women if they did not own anything, by reminding the audience of the suffering and anger Roman women feel when they see the wives of Latin allies wearing ornaments on which they have been deprived. Lucius Valerius and Flucius had further argued that Lex Oppia was only an emergency temporary law passed after the disastrous defeat of Roman soldiers in Canaan by Hannibal. Why do they all have such difficult names? As such, he argues, it was never meant to keep women's spending and morality in check. One of Lucius also stated, "Will we forbid women the use of purple? And although you, a man, are allowed to use purple for the blanket on your bed, will you not allow your wife to have a purple cloak? Even your horse will be more beautiful arrayed than your wife is clothed." As the nobles spoke for or against the repeal of Lex Oppia, the matrons of Rome crowded the Capitol. As Levi writes, the women could not be kept indoors by either the authority of the magistrates, or the orders of their husbands, or their own sense of propriety. They blocked all the streets in the city and the approaches to the forum, and employed the men as they descended to the forum to allow the women to resume their former adornments. After the speeches against in favor of Lex Oppia, the women poured into the streets the next day in greater numbers and besieged the doors of the two buttresses. The dissenting tribunes eventually gave in to the persistent demanding of the Roman matrons, and the Lex Oppia was repealed. And as far as like the power of the woman's collective, it's funny because this is actually a trope we see repeated. There's one time in particular I'm thinking about in Esther, when Queen Vashti refused the king's command to come before him and all the lords during a festival. In Esther 1:17 it says, "For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes. When they report, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. Now, the word despise there is more of like a disrespect, like they won't be honoring and like submissive and obeying, you know. I think that's the context there. This day, the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all their king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus, there will be excessive contempt and wrath. So that's why they decided to get rid of Vashti and replace her with Queen Esther. Because they feared the collective. So yeah, because it turns out women actually, when they're functioning in their natural functions, bring quite a lot to the table. So not only do they have the control mechanism of the collective, but there's also a false dichotomy here in the sense of it's men versus women, when really it's certain ideal sets versus other ideal sets. So women are not alone. They have fathers and they have sons that often will advocate for them, just as weaker men have stronger men that they get to be carried on the back of. It's also interesting to note, because there's a difference between laws that you will be judged for rights, human rights, gender rights, that you will be judged for by the good Lord at the end of the age, and naturalistic rights. So it should behoove people to know that there is very severe rights given to certain women, specifically and especially to widows that have done well by their children and their husbands. And Paul makes a case to advise the men to not be too prideful about being the stronger vessel. In 1 Corinthians 11:11, he starts and says, "Nevertheless, neither is man independent of the woman, nor woman independent of the Lord. For as woman came from man, even so man also comes through woman. But all things are from God." So I'd be careful not to get too big for your britches.
Power to vote. So if we're talking about in today's time, then yes, women do have an enforcement mechanism to be able to impact their will. That's it.
So let's say a woman votes that she wants to be able to have abortions, that women kind of collectively come around and they vote that in. And let's just say, for the sake of this argument, you're in, like, let's say Afghanistan or something. But even here in the United States, it would apply. Let's say that men said, yeah, you voted for that, but we're still not going to let you have abortions. Do you think women could still have abortions?
Yes, and again, this is borne out by history. Throughout history, unfortunately, I'm going to say I'm against abortion, Christian conservative. But throughout history, women from, South America, the Caribbean, to Rome, ancient Rome, medieval Europe, have known how, what herbs cause that. They've also engaged in infanticide and other extreme things. So these are things that happen in the world. If you're talking about like natural law, this is a mechanism. This is an unfortunate thing. It happens. Same with what happens with men in wars with other people's women's, to put it lightly. Human nature is terrible, and we all seek our own, and we have many, many ways in which we can attain that. So, when it comes to women throughout time and their different fluctuations of rights and oppressions, there's a certain level, it seems, in societies that, like a threshold that women will put up with. I personally do believe in a patriarchal order, but not the kind that like the extreme right would call for. I think it goes against God's setup, and I believe it goes against nature itself, because if you push too far, you're going to have problems. So this is the survival strategy of reciprocal cooperation. Now, mind you, women tend to have a lot more of a threshold of crap they'll deal with, but there is a threshold that once you reach it, that's it. You don't want them to go broke. Go for broke. I mean, I don't even think we should be going down this road, by the way. Or at least we should be careful how far down this road we go with our, venturings. It's not pleasing to the Lord. Because the Bible says that a woman is a gift from the Lord. And yes, as long as she is walking in the way that God had called her to walk. So I'm not saying that there's not a lot that needs to be said with that. What I am saying, though, is that if Christian nationalism were to win and a patriarchal order was to be set up, if you want God to bless it, then husbands better cherish their wives and give their lives for them like Christ did the church, as the Bible instructs, if you want God on your side. And you probably should want that, because you ain't going to be a thing very long without the Lord.